When that property goes on the market, it's going to be sold at a lower price. Maybe before it goes on the market, it won't be well maintained. We estimate another 9 million homeowners will lose their homes.
Salimos un fin de semana a ver, a mirar qué casas estaban de venta. Miramos una, el pago iba a ser de $3,200. Muy bonita la casa, el pago bajo, todo era, sacamos la lotería, pero la realidad fue cuando llegó el primer pago. Y yo en lo personal me sentía muy mal con mi esposo, porque trabaja demasiado y tenemos 3 hijos.
The vast majority I've seen lately, unfortunately, are people who've just been hurt by the economy. They were living, day to day, paycheck to paycheck, and unfortunately that ran out. And unemployment isn't going to pay a house mortgage. It's not going to pay a car bill.
I was a log truck driver, and they shut down all the logging systems up there, shut down the sawmills and everything. So I moved down here on a construction job, and the construction job got shut down too. So things are so tough. There's a lot of people out there, and pretty soon you're going to be seeing more camps like this around because there's just no jobs right now.
When the company did well, we did well. When the company did not do well, sir, we did not do well.
The men who destroyed their own companies and plunged the world into crisis walked away from the wreckage with their fortunes intact. The top 5 executives at Lehman Brothers made over $1 billion between 2000 and 2007. And when the firm went bankrupt, they got to keep all the money.
The system worked.
It doesn't make any sense for us to make a loan that's going to fail because we lose. They lose, the borrower loses, the community loses, and we lose.
Countrywide CEO Angelo Mozillo made $470 million between 2003 and 2008. $140 million came from dumping his Countrywide stock in the 12 months before the company collapsed.
Ultimately, I hold the board accountable when a business fails, because the board is responsible for hiring and firing the CEO and overseeing big strategic decisions. The problem with board composition in America is the way boards are elected. The boards are pretty much, in many cases, picked by the CEO.
The board of directors and the compensation committees are the 2 bodies best situated to determine the pay packages for executives.
How do you think they've done over the past 10 years?
Well, I think that if you look at those, I would give about a B. Because
a
B, yes.
Not an F.
Not an F, not an F.
Stan O'Neill, the CEO of Merrill Lynch, received $90 million in 2006 and 2007 alone. After driving his firm into the ground, Merrill Lynch's board of directors allowed him to resign, and he collected $161 million in severance.
Instead of being fired, Stan O'Neill is allowed to resign and takes away $151 million.
That's a decision that board of directors made at that point.
And what grade do you give that decision?
That's a tougher one. I don't know if I would give that one a B as well.
O'Neill's successor, John Thain, was paid $87 million in 2007. And in December of 2008, 2 months after Merrill was bailed out by U.S. taxpayers, Thain and Merrill's board handed out billions in bonuses. In March of 2008, AIG's Financial Products Division lost $11 billion. Instead of being fired, Joseph Cassano, the head of AIG FP, was kept on as a consultant for $1 million a month.
And you want to make sure that the key players and the key employees within AIG-FP, we retain that intellectual knowledge.
I attended a very interesting dinner organized by Hank Paulson a little more than 1 year ago. With some officials and a couple of CEOs from the biggest banks in the U.S. And surprisingly enough, all these gentlemen were arguing we were too greedy. So we have part of responsibility, fine. And then they were turning to the Treasurer, to the Secretary of the Treasury, and say, you should regulate more because we're too greedy. We can't avoid it. The only way to avoid this is to have more regulation.
I have spoken to many bankers about this question, including very senior ones. And this is the first time that I've ever heard anybody say that they actually wanted their compensation to be regulated in any way.
Yeah, because it was at the moment where they were afraid. And after, when solution to the crisis began to appear, then probably they changed their mind.
In the U.S., the banks are now bigger, more powerful, and more concentrated than ever before.
There are fewer competitors. A lot of smaller banks have been taken over by big ones. JP Morgan today is even bigger than it was before.
JP Morgan took over first Bear Stearns and then WaMu. Bank of America took over Countrywide and Merrill Lynch. Wells Fargo took over Wachovia.
After the crisis, the financial industry, including the Financial Services Roundtable, worked harder than ever to fight reform. The financial sector employs 3,000 lobbyists, more than 5 for each member of Congress.
Do you think the financial services industry has excessive political influence in the United States?
No. I think that every person in the country is represented here in Washington.
And you think that all segments of American society have equal and fair access to the system?
You can walk into any hearing room that you would like. Yes, I do.
One can walk into any hearing room. One cannot necessarily write the kind of lobbying checks that your industry writes or engage in the level of political contributions that your industry engages in.
Between 1998 and 2008, the financial industry spent over $5 billion on lobbying and campaign contributions. And since the crisis, they're spending even more money. The financial industry also exerts its influence in a more subtle way, one that most Americans don't know about. It has corrupted the study of economics itself.
Deregulation had a tremendous financial and intellectual support because people argued it for their own benefit. The economics profession was the main source of that illusion.
Since the 1980s, academic economists have been major advocates of deregulation and played powerful roles in shaping U.S. government policy. Very few of these economic experts warned about the crisis. And even after the crisis, many of them opposed reform.
The guys who taught these things tended to get paid a lot of money being consultants. Business school professors don't live on a faculty salary. They do very, very well.
Over the last decade, the financial services industry has made about $5 billion worth of political contributions in the United States. It's kind of a lot of money. That doesn't bother you?
No. Martin Feldstein is a professor at Harvard and one of the world's most prominent economists. As President Reagan's chief economic advisor, he was a major architect of deregulation. And from 1988 until 2009, he was on the board of directors of both AIG and AIG Financial Products, which paid him millions of dollars.
You have any regrets about having been on AIG's board?
I have no comments. No, I have no regrets about being on AIG's board.
None?
That I can say, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Okay. You have any regrets about AIG's decisions?
I cannot say anything more about AIG.
I've taught at Northwestern and Chicago, Harvard, and Columbia.
Glenn Hubbard is the dean of Columbia Business School and was the chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors under George W. Bush.
Do you think the financial services industry has too much political power in the United States?
I don't think so, no. You certainly wouldn't get that impression by the drubbing that they regularly get in Washington.
Many prominent academics quietly make fortunes while helping the financial industry shape public debate and government policy. The Analysis Group, Charles River Associates, Compass Lexicon, and the Law and Economics Consulting Group manage a multi-billion-dollar industry that provides academic experts for hire. Two bankers who used these services were Ralph Ciaffi and Matthew Tannen. Bear Stearns hedge fund managers prosecuted for securities fraud. After hiring the analysis group, both were acquitted. Glenn Hubbard was paid $100,000 to testify in their defense.
Do you think that the economics discipline has a conflict of interest problem?
I'm not sure I know what you mean.
Do you think that a significant fraction of the economics discipline, number of economists, have financial conflicts of interest that in some way might call into question or color?
Oh, I see what you're saying. I doubt it. Most academic economists, aren't wealthy business people.
Hubbard makes $250,000 a year as a board member of MetLife and was formerly on the board of Capmark, a major commercial mortgage lender during the bubble, which went bankrupt in 2009. He has also advised Nomura Securities, KKR Financial Corporation, and many other financial firms. Laura Tyson, who declined to be interviewed for this film, is a professor at the University of California, Berkeley. She was the chair of the Council of Economic Advisors and then director of the National Economic Council in the Clinton administration. Shortly after leaving government, she joined the board of Morgan Stanley, which pays her $350,000 a year. Ruth Simmons, the president of Brown University, makes over $300,000 a year on the board of Goldman Sachs. Larry Summers, who as Treasury Secretary played a critical role in the deregulation of derivatives, became president of Harvard in 2001. While at Harvard, he made millions consulting to hedge funds and millions more in speaking fees, much of it from investment banks. According to his federal disclosure report, Summers' net worth is between $16.5 million and $39.5 million. Frederick Mishkin, who returned to Columbia Business School after leaving the Federal Reserve, reported on his federal disclosure report that his net worth was between $6 million and $17 million.
In 2006, you co-authored a study of Iceland's financial system.
Right.
Iceland is also an advanced country with excellent institutions, low corruption, rule of law. The economy has already adjusted to financial liberalization, while prudential regulation supervision is generally quite strong.
Yeah, and that was the mistake. That turns out that that the prudential regulation and supervision was not strong in Iceland, and particularly
so what
during
led
this
you
period,
to think that it was?
I think that you're going with the information you had, and generally the view was that Iceland had very good institutions. It was a very advanced country.
Who told you that? What kind of research did you do?
You talk to people. You have faith in the central bank, which actually did fall down on the job. Clearly,
why do you have faith in a central bank?
Well, that faith because you go with the information you have.
How much were you paid to write it?
I was paid. I think the number was. It's public information.
On your CV, the title of this report has been changed from Financial Stability in Iceland to Financial Instability in Iceland.
Oh, well, I don't know. Wherever it is the thing. If it's a typo, there's a typo.
I think what should be publicly available is whenever anybody does research on a topic that they disclose if they have any financial conflict with that research.
But if I recall, there is no policy to that effect.
I can't imagine anybody not doing that. In terms of putting it in a paper, there would be significant professional sanction for failure to do that.
I didn't see any place in the study where you indicated that you had been paid by the Icelandic Chamber of Commerce to produce it.
No, I don't,
Okay.
Richard Portis, the most famous economist in Britain and a professor at London Business School, was also commissioned by the Icelandic Chamber of Commerce in 2007 to write a report which praised the Icelandic financial sector.
The banks themselves are highly liquid. They've actually made money on the fall of the Icelandic krona. These are strong banks. Their funding, their market funding is assured for the coming year. These are well-run banks. Richard, thank you so much.
Like Mishkin, Portis's report didn't disclose his payment from the Icelandic Chamber of Commerce.
Does Harvard require disclosures of financial conflict of interest in publications?
Not to my knowledge.
Do you require people to report the compensation they've received from outside activities?
No.
Don't you think that's a problem?
I don't see why.
Martin Feldstein being on the board of AIG, Laura Tyson going on the board of Morgan Stanley, Larry Summers making $10 million a year consulting to financial services firms. Irrelevant.
Yeah, basically irrelevant.
You've written a very large number of articles about a very wide array of subjects.